So let me start my talk with explaining to you what identity means to me. It is the essence that structures your personality, your behavior, your appearance, your thought pattern, your career choices, and your relationships. Identity is basically everything that makes you a person. And believe it or not, identity is a big issue here in the UAE, especially with the Emiratis and specifically with females. That's because there are so many expectations placed on us females regarding what we can do in the society that perceives us as the homemakers rather than the scholars, as the mothers rather than the teachers, as the housekeepers rather than the entrepreneurs. So we grew up with this knowledge of the guidelines that we have to follow in order to be looked at in a good light. Everything from what to wear, what to do, how to speak, and even when to marry. So I'm not talking about my religion, which is Islam, nor my country, the UAE, or its rulers, because our sheikhs and our country actually want to enhance a woman's place in the society and actually encourage us to pursue our career choices and even live our lives in a very successful way. Same goes for my religion, which has placed the woman in such a high, important place in everything, giving her so many freedoms of choice. So I'm not talking about all those factors in this discussion. I'm talking about the people. The people that live around me, the people that surround me, and have something to say for everything and anything. And I bet that you know those type of people because you have encountered those type of people in your daily lives as well. So back to my point. We females grew up with the knowledge that although education is good and well, career-wise, we have limited options. And all of this actually starts in schools. We're placed in the same classmates from kindergarten to graduation. And when I'm talking about classmates, I mean purely female-based classes. And although you think that will be a close-knit group of friends, the reality of it was you'll only know some of those people and only know them for a few. And for me personally, I just had 2 friends, and both of them were my cousins. So during that period of me growing up, I used to mimic those girls. I used to try and be those girls because I thought that's what I had to do to be a true Emirati female. I also wanted to be loved and liked by many, and I know people love that, when people like them as well. And one of my friends was very popular in school. And even though I tried for years to be like someone else, I was still different from the girls in school. And the reason is because of my mom. You see, she has lived in America for a time, and she loved the culture there, and she loved the freedom. So she decided to raise me with that Western influence, and it stuck to me like glue. It was basically the basis of my life, as I learned to speak English before I even knew a word in Arabic. In fact, my first word was mosque, not masjid, mosque. And I was allowed to wear short skirts. I was allowed to wear sleeveless shirts and shorts, unlike the other Emirati girls. And I listened to only English music. I watched only English movies and TV, and I read only English books. And even though my mom was supportive and gave me the freedom that others lacked, as any typical child would do, I did the opposite of what she wanted me to do. And that's because in my head, I want to be a typical Emirati female. But with my different Arabic accent, because of me learning English since I was young, I was bullied by the girls in school. I was bullied for what I wore. I was bullied for the way I spoke, the way I acted. I was bullied for being different, despite my attempts to fit in. Now, fast forward into my graduation years, I was actually given a chance by my government to study abroad. And the idea came actually from my mom, who saw the opportunity in that, and she encouraged me. And she pushed me to go to Australia, despite my deep fears of going. I actually really did not want to go. Because looking at my life back then, how could I move to a different country if I couldn't even function or be accepted in my own country? How was I to survive in a different place away from everything that is familiar when I rely rely on my family in everything. I couldn't cook. I didn't know how to clean, and I definitely did not know how to open a bank account. And despite all that, I went. And at only 16 years of age, I found myself alone studying in Australia. At first, I was actually happy about discovering this new place and, in a sense, creating a new life for myself. It was a new chapter. It was a new beginning. Thinking to myself, yes, I am finally free to be me. But then I discovered there were still some things, some issues that I didn't prepare for. During my first year there in Australia, I found myself surrounded by multicultural, national cultures. Rarely did I find someone with an Arabic background. It was refreshing at first, but after a few observations, I noticed that most of them already have formed a group for themselves. The Koreans only mixed with the Koreans, the Chinese only with the Chinese, and it was really hard breaking into a group and making friends. But eventually, I managed to do that. So previous to coming to Australia, I actually decided not to wear my scarf, as I wasn't wearing the hijab but showing bits of my hair before. But the biggest decision I made was actually changing my appearance in order for me to adapt and fit into this new international-based culture. In fact, I actually managed to embrace some of what I love most in my dress code. And it might surprise you, but I used to dress up as a punk goth. And I had lots of skulls on, and I was bobbing my head to rock music on full volume. And I was liked, and I was approached by the internationals. They actually embraced the real me. However, that elation of being accepted, being myself, was short-lived, as the number of Arabs studying in Australia increased. And I soon found myself unable to avoid them in my daily interactions. I made some friends out of them eventually, but in all, I was still mocked. I was mocked by my own culture, just like before. But this time, I was mocked for not wearing my scarf. I was mocked for being a human being. So as a child, I was mocked for trying to be a typical Arab girl. And now at age 17, I was mocked for not dressing as a typical Arab girl and for trying to fit in with the internationals. So at this point, I became depressed. Scratch that. I became severely depressed. I had no one to tell me everything would be fine. I had no one to rely on emotionally when everything was crashing down on me. So I did the only thing I could. I went back to familiar grounds and embraced my culture again. And I also decided to wear my hijab full on. Ironically, after that decision, I was finally accepted by the Arabs there. However, I felt insecure. And as I noticed that my dealings with the nationals has taken a different route. It became more noticeable during classes where I would sit down and try to start a conversation with someone. But each time I was ignored and rejected. It was bizarre, this feeling of being surrounded by people in every angle, but still ending up feeling isolated, unwanted, and very lonely. I tried reaching out. I tried reaching out to those who might understand me better, only to be discouraged and rejected. I was sick of their mocking. I was sick of their judgments, and I almost gave up all hope of being accepted for me and not what I should be. So during that year, I decided to go home for summer break. I remember this till now. The first thing that I saw as I stepped out of the plane was my mother, greeting me with this huge, proud smile. And then it hit me like that. Why should I care what others thought of me? I spent a large portion of my life trying to please others, trying to fit into the society that does not accept anything that is different. And despite all my efforts, I was still constantly mocked and criticized by them. I was criticized for what I wore, how I looked. I was even criticized for my degree choice and told that sketching, animation, was not a real subject worth studying. So I finally found out that my mom was actually proud of what I'm doing, proud of my accomplishments, proud of the things that I'm doing in Australia, despite people back home criticizing her for her parental methods of sending a young girl alone to a different country. asking her, aren't you afraid for your daughter who's living all alone so far away from you? Aren't you afraid of what she's doing there? Aren't you afraid that she'll take advantage of those freedoms offered there in Australia? Despite all that criticism and jabs at her character and her decision, she was still proudful of what I'm doing there. So I thought to myself, why should I need to care what others think of me? As long as I have this one person, this special person that has done everything in her power to give me an opportunity, to give me a future that is different from what society has decided for me. So I finally decided to take a hard risk, that bold step into not caring what others thought of me. I decided to discard all the negativity in my life and embrace only the positive aspects of life. I had this one chance to do what I want, and I will take charge of that chance full on. I decided I don't want to be a follower, but I want to be the one that is being followed. I decided to embrace my true self. I decided to create my own identity, my own personality that reflects my ambitions, my values, my likes, my career choices. In fact, that decision has changed what I see myself in the future, what I aspire to be. And now I aspire to be a Hollywood movie director. So you see, a person can take that choice of being accepted and to fit in with the majority of the people by pleasing them. But they have to ask themselves, are they truly happy with that choice? And with this, I would like to conclude by sharing this quote from the famous German physicist Albert Einstein, who once said, a person who follows the crowd will usually go no further than the crowd, but the person who walks alone is likely to find themselves in places no one has ever been before. So I would like to end this chat by thanking my mom for all her support that helped in creating the person that I am today. Thank you.